Hello and welcome to episode 34 of the Paranormal Paradigm podcast. Thank you for joining me for yet another episode of the podcast. Today we've got a fantastic guest. It's Kenney W Irish. Now, for those that follow my other show, the Collective Conspiracy Show, you might remember that I did an interview with Kenney as part of the Festival of the Unexplained, the winter edition that we did a few months ago now. I interviewed Chris McKinnell, which we put on a show for the Paranormal Paradigm podcast a few episodes back. And as part of the same festival, I also interviewed Kenney. And I asked him at the time if he'd be interested in coming on the show, and he said that he would be. Now, Kenney is an author of a book called American Cryptids in Pursuit of the Elusive Creatures. He's a published author. He's also a hardcore punk musician as well. And that's where his nickname comes from. So he's known as the Cryptopunkologist, which I think is great, as opposed to the standard cryptozoologist. I mean, that's a bit boring, really. Why go by that when you can call yourself the Cryptopunkologist? And I think it's a brilliant name, and it certainly makes him stand out from the rest of the field as well. So he's going to be coming on to talk about his book, to talk about cryptids in general, so not just Bigfoot, but other creatures as well. We're going to delve into the experiences that, the people that he's spoken to in order to get the experiences and the encounters for his new book. But before we do, don't forget we have that competition running at the moment, that raffle for a copy of a signed copy of my new book, Experiences of a Paranormal Investigator. So don't forget, all you have to do is email me at paranormalparadigmpodcast@gmail.com or kieran.woodhouse@gmail.com, or you can Facebook me. And I've had quite a few people already reach out. And when you do email me, if you just put in the subject book or something along those lines, I will reply to you with a number, just a random number, and that's your number then. That's essentially your raffle ticket. And then in a few shows' time, I will do a, not so live really, because it's a pre-recorded podcast, but I'll do a live at the time of recording random draw, and whoever's number comes out will win a signed copy of the book. So don't forget to do that. You've really got nothing to lose. It's just a quick email or a quick Facebook message, and I will give you your number. Of course, I'll keep track of all the numbers as well. But anyway, let's get to the show. It's going to be a really good one. Really like Kenney. I think he's a fantastic character. Really great guy. And he's got a lot of great stories to tell. So here we go. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Kenney to the show. Kenney, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing brilliant. It's Friday as we record this, so it's the start of a long weekend for us. We have bank holiday on Monday, so it's going to be a good weekend.
Nice, awesome. So it's I haven't hit my evening yet. It was at 8 p.m. where you are, right?
Just before now. Yeah, so we've just put the baby to bed and it's time to relax.
Yeah, I'm still at work. I still got a few hours left here, so it's only 3 p.m. here. So.
But it's not a bad job if you can afford to stop working and record a podcast.
I agree. Without a doubt.
So obviously, thank you for coming on. We've spoken before. I interviewed you for the Festival of the Unexplained, the Winter Festival, and I loved your topics. I loved you as a guy, and I thought, I've got to get you back onto the Paranormal Paradigm show. And here you are. So since then, you've released your book, American Cryptids. How is that going? How's it selling?
It's phenomenal, way better than I even expected it to do. It's a rebranding of a previous publication. I ended up switching publishers, and so we made a lot of changes to the book and just made it that much better. And it was released March 9th, and as of right now, it's sitting at number 3 in its genre almost 2 months later. So it's just doing phenomenal. I'm getting a lot of really good feedback from it. From the cover to, the layout, the formula and format of, how each chapter is laid out from state to state. It's just, again, it's been phenomenal feedback, and I'm blown away at the support that I've been getting from the community and the public in regard to purchasing it, and, sending me, messages through Messenger on Facebook and email telling me, all their thoughts and how much, they enjoyed it. So, and how, they immediately go right to their home state chapter or where they're living and look it up, and they kind of feel a connection to it and feel like they're part of it, and which that was part of the plan too, because I wanted to do something different where, I wasn't just writing a book. I wanted to actually feel like I was like a tour guide, taking people from state to state, talking about the history and Native American lore and cryptids and Bigfoot. Again, it's done very, very well, and I'm very pleased and very grateful, to the people that follow me and the people that have purchased it and the people that purchased it and then started following me. I'm beyond grateful.
Brilliant. Well, I'm really, really glad that it's doing well. I think what sells it as well is you as a character, I guess. Your passion really does come across in everything that you do for this field, and I think that's a really good selling point for you. In terms of the book itself, you mentioned there you wanted to lay out almost like you were a tour guide, so you're taking the reader across America, state to state. About all the different kind of sightings that are witnessed in those states. When you were doing that, did you have a particular state in mind that would stick out to you as being the most popular for sightings?
I guess yes to a degree. I really, Washington State, in regards to, Sasquatch, I figured, would really stick out. And then, some of the different states that you go to, like if you go to like Texas, like they talk a lot about like thunderbirds, and then you go into like Utah, they talk about like skinwalkers, and so I knew kind of what I was getting into from each state. It was just really fun to be able to go from writing something about a certain a certain subject or a certain creature, if you will, and then going to another state and then just writing about another one, and then going to another state and writing about another one. So it wasn't like it was all about one, which was also exciting, to write it, because it was just, I was entertained while writing it, where a lot of the time I'm not, what I'm writing. It's more of a struggle. But
were you surprised though, as you were going from state to state, and maybe you had a particular state that would have been down low on your list in terms of what you would have expected? Were you surprised by a few states and how they kind of totted up?
Yeah, I was surprised, because I expected to find nothing in some states, and to find that, there was some activity. I mean, I came across cryptids that I'd never even heard of. And I'm like, wow, really? Or ones that I'd completely forgotten about, like the Loveland Frog Man, Alligator Man, all these ones that maybe I'd heard of, and to come across it, and I'm like, oh wow, I forgot all about that, or wow, I'd never heard of that. Like, I'd heard, like somebody say something about like Alligator Man, but there was like a movie, and I thought like that's what they were referring to. So when I came across that in that state, because there's a popular cryptid almost in every state, and a lot of the time it's a Sasquatch, so I didn't want to just have the popular one in every state be a Sasquatch. So I tried to avoid that as much as possible and kind of go a little bit further and deeper. And came across some crazy creatures. Sinkhole Sam is a large snake that there was like this man-made lake that they drained down, and so some I believe they were hunters or something were coming through, and there was this huge snake that wasn't native to that state, and or maybe even what they were saying is native to actually like the United States. It was huge, and it ended up going into a sinkhole, and the theory is that those holes actually go underground and go into other parts of the the country, and so again it was just awesome to read some of this stuff and come across it, because there's so many I had some guy like about a month ago say, hey, have you heard about the raccoon man? I'm like, are you kidding me? He's like, no. And I'm like, I'm like, nope, I haven't heard about the raccoon man, but I guess I'm about to now. But yeah, there's all kinds of crazy stuff. It sounds
like a really cheap version of the Avengers or something, with like Alligator Man, Raccoon Man, like some really bad superhero movie. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what these are? I mean, you've just mentioned about the snake there. Tell us a little bit about Raccoon Man and Alligator Man.
Well, the funny thing is I I don't know much about Raccoon Man because the guy just kind of brought it up. Alligator Man, again, it wasn't really. It was just a couple sightings of some people saw something, in a swamp or near the side of the road, and which looked like a man with an alligator head. It was short-lived. It wasn't many sightings. So some people had said stuff about obviously they're thinking it was high school kids trying to pull a prank, different things like that. But the only issue with it is like they haven't actually been able to prove that somebody was pulling a prank, but they can't actually prove that it actually exists either. So the fact that they can't find one to balance out the other leaves it open to legend and imagination. So, which again, that's kind of what drives me. I love, I just love legend. I love mysteries, even if they're kind of crazy and off the wall, just the thought of it. And, I remember just as a young kid, the legend of Sleepy Hollow, just loving that. I remember I saw it was Disney, Disney did a cartoon, Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And from there, it was like I kind of went from, just loving like monsters like King Kong and Godzilla and the Incredible Hulk to, wait a minute, there's like, those are monsters, but legends are cool too. And so I kind of fell into that. And so when I rebranded New York, which is actually where I live now, I used to live in northern Vermont, but part of what I put in there was actually, I talked about the legend of Sleepy Hollow because it's near Kinderhook, New York, Sleepy Hollow. And, it's funny because, you talk to people and they're like, oh, it's just a story, just real cool kind of myth. And, but you talk to some people from that area, they tell you it really happened, which, wow. I don't know that there was actually a guy that had no head and, he had a pumpkin on it. I don't know, but I guarantee you this, that every story starts from somewhere and there is some ounce of truth in it. So there's a reason that it exists. So I ended up putting that legend in there because in reality, it's really kind of eerie and creepy to think of, being on a horse going down this road. There's nobody around. Then all of a sudden you just hear like another horse coming up behind you and you turn around, you see that. So, it was awesome, and, to add that into the book was, for me was just, I just really was happy about adding that into the book. Again, and then the other thing too, is there's like this stone building in Kinderhook where they say that the party that he was actually at took place. And I've driven by there so many times and just, it's like I've stopped, I've taken pictures of it because again, what if, that there was some truth that there was a party there, but was it actually, the part of the legend of Sleepy Hollow? I don't know 100% that it is, but that's what people in the area say, and that's how the legend goes. So,
and do you think with I'm still kind of stuck on Alligator Man? Do you when
you'll never be able to let go?
As soon as this ends, I'm straight off to research Alligator Man. When you look at things like Bigfoot, for example, and we talk about Bigfoot a lot, and it's because there is actually photos and there are videos and as evidence in a way to show that it does exist. Do you think that when you have people talk about Alligator Man and Raccoon Man, do you think in a way that discredits actual, not to say that they don't exist, but it kind of comes across really quite silly at that point, and it might discredit actual cryptid sightings? Do you feel like it can do that?
It definitely can. Alligator Man, it's very corny. Mm-hmm. The thought of it is cool, but yet at the same time, it's kind of corny. So it can, but you know what? I think it really comes down to the individual, who looks into it. Because it's, I guess the best way for me to say it is, when we kind of hold ourselves kind of accountable, to what we do, in what we say. Like for me, I'm like certain people will say, well, this group or this makes, what we do look stupid, to people. I hear that a lot. And I'm to a point where I'm responsible for Kenney, and I'm only going to allow Kenney to make Kenney look stupid.
Yeah.
So, can it discredit it in somebody's mind? Sure. Absolutely. Can it make it look corny? Absolutely. But, at the end of the day, it's still in newspapers. It's still written. It's still talked about. So, to be honest with you, you go back 20 years ago, to bring up Sasquatch and Bigfoot, if you will, that was corny, but now it's cool. Now it's mainstream. You had a lot of these shows, like American Monsters, Monster Quest, a lot of these ones that introduced it to the public, for folks that had never really known anything about it or maybe personally heard of it. And it was just kind of like the perfect intro to the show that ended up coming out, Finding Bigfoot, which made Bigfoot mainstream. It literally took Bigfoot to the next level. And I mean, it's marketing now. So it's cool now. It's cool to, say, hey, I believe in Sasquatch. I believe in Bigfoot, or I had a Bigfoot sighting. You go back 20 years ago, it wasn't. Who knows? 20 years from now, it may be cool to say that, you saw Alligator Man. I mean, I doubt it, but hey, who am I to say?
And when you were writing the book, obviously, did you go out and talk to people? Did you actually have interviews with some of the people that have witnessed these sightings?
Yeah, well, how I did it, because obviously there was no way I was going to be able to run a business during the week and visit all 50 states. So I did a lot of research on Native American lore, and the popular cryptid from whatever that state was. So where the challenge came was finding, because I wanted to close every chapter with Sasquatch encounter, sighting, what have you. So I'm like, how am I going to do this? Because again, I can't get to all 50 states, and I didn't want to be that guy who just went online and said, punched in the BFRO and then put that in the book and then called it a day. The whole purpose of the book was to be different from what everybody else was writing in format and everything. So I sat there and just brainstormed, and I came up with the idea. Sure, I'm still going to use Google, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to each state. I'm going to use Google Maps. So I pulled up Google Maps, found a real foresty area, just kind of zoomed in on it, found out what the closest town was to it. Looked up every mom and pop diner, every mom and pop corner store, every barbershop, and simply just picked up the phone, called them and said, hey, I'm writing a book on cryptids, and I heard there's been some Sasquatch and Bigfoot sightings in your area. What can you tell me? And from there, if they didn't know somebody that had one, if they hadn't had one themselves, they knew their cousin's brother's sister had one, and they'd simply put me in contact with them. And so I had multiple conversations with different people from different states, but I would only choose one. And my point in that was I didn't want to say kind of the same stuff in the same area over and over again, for one. And for two, the ones that I went with were the ones that the person, number one, they weren't looking. They had no intention. Number two, they didn't believe. And number three, even more important, they weren't they weren't a Sasquatch investigator.
Yep.
They weren't out there doing anything like that. So that was really important to me. So the encounters that I went with were people that were hiking, didn't expect to see what they saw, were fishing, were driving down the road and something ran across the road. There were short and sweet encounters. I had other individuals that I talked to. Like I had this one guy I was talking to, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've seen Bigfoot. I've seen plenty of them." I'm like, "Really? How many?" He's like, "Hundreds." And I'm just like, I just click, hung up the phone. I'm like, what is that? And then there were other individuals that, the average sighting is like, 5 seconds if you're lucky. And some people had so much detail that I'm just like, you might have seen something, but for you to see all that detail in a quick encounter, it just sounds like there was a lot extra kind of thrown in there. The folks that didn't believe didn't have a ton of detail. They were able to say, average height of whatever the figure looked like or whatever. Those are the ones I went with. And
I must say that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because normally you would think on the face of it, the person that has a lot of detail is the person that clearly did witness it, and the person who's quite vague and can't really give you the ins and outs of what they saw is clearly making it up because they can't tell you a lot. But it's really interesting that you're looking at it the other way around, actually, that the person with too much detail almost is fabricating a little bit of it, and the person who with not that much detail probably actually did have that 5-second encounter. They didn't really know what they were looking at, and therefore their story is a bit vague.
Right. And again, I'd ask about their background and, their experience with the subject. And the people that I spoke to, or let me say it like this, the individuals whose encounters that I put in the book, literally had no experience, no background in it, just had heard of it, knew about Jack Links, knew about Sasquatch Pizza, knew about the show Finding Bigfoot, but never really cared, knew about, Monster Quest, but never really cared. And again, when I say 5 seconds, that's a long time. That's actually a long time. And so, I mean, some, and again, you're talking to these individuals, and like, for instance, one of the encounters that really sticks out to me is the last chapter in the book. It was a cattle rancher, and you don't mess with cattle ranchers. Those guys will knock a tree down with by punching it. And to talk to the cattle rancher, and he'd just be like the regular, same tone, normal tone, but then when he started going into what he had witnessed and what he felt he had encountered and actually took a shot at, his voice was cracking. It's like it was different. Like you feel the emotion, you feel the excitement that they felt at the time, but you also feel the emotion, and it left an impression on them, and it changed them. And you can get that, and you can feel that from talking with them. So, I had somebody actually say to me, and I don't think they liked my answer, but they said, how come you went with those stories? They're like, I get your point, but why'd you go with those stories instead of the other ones where they might sell better, because there's more dramatics there. And I said, because it's a nonfiction book. It's not fiction. It's a nonfiction book. And I'm going to go with the reality of the situation. And I've actually had some people, tell me that they love the format of the book and everything, but what they didn't like was they felt like some of the encounters were very vague. And I'm like, can you elaborate? Well, they believe they know what they saw, but yeah, to this day they can't really say 100%. And I'm like, okay. That's called
the thing encounter. Is though, by its very nature, for in my opinion anyway, this kind of thing is just that. It's they're mysterious creatures. If we knew what they were, then they wouldn't be cryptids. They'd be scientifically proven to exist animals. So by its very nature, it's kind of a bit shady in terms of what they are.
Yeah, agreed. And it's like I wanted it to be as real life as possible. And from what I normally hear, from people that have encountered. So I just, I went in that direction, and not a day has gone by that I regret it,
No.
Because just like, I'm putting down here somebody who, had an encounter, and I'm not discrediting any of the other people who I didn't put in there. But again, what really sticks out to me, and you get the emotion from, are the individuals, again, that weren't even looking, didn't even think about it, and now their life's changed. They're questioning what they knew about everything.
Yeah.
So again, I went with 50 of those. Well, I went with 49 of those because there was one that I went with, or two. So I went with 48. There were two of them that I went with that were actually well-known encounters. One was in Whitehall, New York. That's actually where our research area was. So I wanted, and that's where I live, is in New York. So I wanted to, definitely pinpoint that. But that's where I also brought in like the legend of, Sleepy Hollow.
Sleepy Hollow,
so kind of made it personal for myself. And so it was fun. It was a challenge. Like I said, trying to, get all the encounters from 50 states, but at the same time, it wasn't half as hard as I expected it to be.
No. I mean, you talk about the vague encounters that some people seem to be, for some reason, disappointed in. Are there any encounters there where the creature that is being spotted has interacted with the person who is watching them? Almost so. I use Bigfoot as an example, but Bigfoot has looked back at them, or Mothman has. Is that an encounter?
Yeah. There was some where people came up, and it wasn't like a road crossing. Like they were walking, they were hiking, and they turned and they saw something kind of going back and forth, kind of swaying back and forth, watching them. And there was another one where there was a gentleman that was fishing, and this is the only one that when people say were there any violent encounters, this is the only one that I could say I would consider to be somewhat violent. There was a gentleman, he was fishing, and all of a sudden he heard this like loud smack, crack noise. And all this wood kind of started coming, wood chips kind of came flying down at him, and bark and different stuff. And he turned around and he looked, and there was like this like ledge up behind him, and he saw this large figure, which he definitely said, I'm pretty sure I know what I saw there. And it had this like big log, and it was hitting it up against a tree. And when he hit it up against a tree, it was breaking apart, and that's what was coming down, hitting him. So he said that the encounter lasted about 2 minutes, but he said the thing is the 2 minutes consisted of him hearing the noise, feeling the stuff hitting him, turning around and looking, seeing what he saw, and running away. So in reality, he saw it for only seconds when he looked, because when he was running, he didn't want to look back. But as he was running, he could continue to hear the log being slammed up against the tree. So that's why, it went on for a while, but he didn't see it for 2 minutes.
And was this a Bigfoot type creature, I'm guessing?
He was saying that he believed it to be a Bigfoot.
And that's strange, because it sounds like the creature was trying to intimidate him, maybe, or was trying to, impose itself upon him. But you never really hear about that, do you? They're always spotted at a distance. That's quite a rare occurrence.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I talked to the guy, and the more I talked to him, like, at first I'm thinking, okay, wait a minute, because usually they try not to be seen. But when I talked to him, I was kind of getting that same emotion and that same excited anxiety that I was getting from a lot of people. So I'm just like, okay, maybe this is one of those rare occasions, where there was a reason. I don't know, somebody, I've talked to a couple of people about it, and they've said to me, well, who knows, maybe it was a mom, and it's I
was going to say that.
Yeah. So it could have been something like that, and trying to scare them off, acting territorial. But other than that, I mean, that was it. I mean, there were other individuals I'd spoken about how, they were, trying to break down their door to get into their house and this and that. And I'm just like, okay, all right, that's not, what I'm looking for. And, so that I would say would probably be the most violent encounter, that I'd come across, and where it wasn't looking to get away. Yeah. It was like it was standing its ground.
Right. Okay. And for me, one of my probably my favorite cryptid outside of Bigfoot, of course, is Mothman. I've always been fascinated with the idea of Mothman. I mean, remember that film, Was it Richard Gere? Was it
Mothman Prophecies?
Yeah, the Mothman Prophecies. Yeah. And who was the guy that wrote books about Mothman? Is it Keel? Am I making that up? Something. I might be completely fabricating that. I'll have to have a look. But I'm sure somebody wrote some books about Mothman.
Oh yeah.
Have you come across anything like that? Because I'd love to kind of hear about those stories.
I haven't personally. I mean, I've West Virginia, Point Pleasant, and when I covered that area, the Mothman was what I talked about in the book.
Yeah.
But some of the people that I've talked to, it's funny because you're automatically thinking, a man with moth wings, which I think is cool. But, the other thing with it is some people I've talked to have had, different theories about it. For instance, some people have said that they believe it was a demon.
Right. Okay.
Other people have said that they believe it was a human being that was possessed. Others have said that they believe it was extraterrestrial. Some say it was a misidentification. It was a huge owl. So there's all these different theories. So when you think about it, I don't necessarily, believe that, the Mothman sitting on top of the bridge is, was made it collapse. The theory that I kind of go on there is, and what a lot of people say is that Mothman shows up before a disaster.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people, tend to believe that, because of the Mothman, the bridge collapsed.
Yeah.
But in reality, the theory and the story behind it is that when you see the Mothman, it means that disaster is pretty much going to happen in one way, one form or another. And that's kind of why some people have kind of gone on saying that they think it was potentially, a demon or something possessed, something evil. But again, there's a lot of people that say that they believe it was a huge owl, and that's what folks saw. But so I just, we'll see.
I find it fascinating how what you spoke of there with the linking it to demons and a man possessed. Have you come across, because the research I've done into Bigfoot and it's crossed quite regularly into UFOs, and a lot of people often encounter UFOs in the same area at the same time that they encounter Bigfoot. Did you come across any of that? Did you come across any more like kind of the paranormal field crossing with each other in some of your experiences? Yeah.
I mean, it's constantly it's constantly brought up. There's, right now, in the community, I would say that, there's that hard line drawn in the sand. You're either, on the, their ghost, their spirit, their extraterrestrial side, or you're on the flesh and blood side. I'm more on the flesh and blood side, but I also don't draw a line in the sand, because when you draw a line in the sand, in my opinion, that stops conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I come across that all the time. I've talked to people all the time that believe that, and and they've got some good reasoning for it. Some people have said, well, why can't a Sasquatch be walking the earth, but there also be something extraterrestrial that resembles one?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, it's sure. In the crazy thing about this subject is the more you look into it, the more questions you have.
Yeah.
The more you walk away, like you'll never get the answer you're looking for. But there's a lot of people that believe there's a correlation between extraterrestrials and Sasquatch. Some say that they are extraterrestrial and that they're aliens. Others believe that they're drawn to the energy of a space shuttle type of energy that would throw off.
Okay.
And that's why they're drawn to that, because they're animals and they're drawn to certain energies. And again, some people just say that no, they are 100%. They're aliens. And somebody even said this to me one time, and it made me think. They're like, "Why do you think Chewbacca was in the Star Wars movies?" And it made me think for a second.
Yeah.
I'm like, Yeah, I never really even put that together, but but yeah, we come across that a lot.
Okay. And do you ever I've been thinking about UFOs there, what we were talking about, but there's obviously around UFOs there's always a huge government cover up, and the government know about it, but they keep it a secret. Do you think that can apply to creatures like Bigfoot? Do you think the government are aware of it and they are keeping it a secret?
Well, I'd say probably nowadays, like if you asked me a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I'd say no. But now, since the U.S. government has come out and talked about UFOs recently in the last year or so, and saying that they do exist and that there are things that we don't necessarily know that hasn't been brought to the public's attention, I'd say yes. And it's funny because I always say this. For the longest time, we've always wanted to know what the government knows about UFOs, and then they wait till a pandemic and they say, "Oh, by the way, UFOs exist." Oh, but Corona, you're going to die, and then that's it.
Yeah, we spoke of this last time, didn't we?
I think we did.
We found it amazing how they were literally drip feeding kind of, oh, by the way, UFOs are real. But no one's looking over there because they're all too busy fixated on COVID and whatever that is. And no one's really paying any attention. And that way the government can say, well, we did tell you. And people say, yeah, but we didn't really notice it, and that's fascinating. And do you think if they are covering up cryptids, what are they getting out of it? What are they getting out of that?
Yeah. I've had some folks that I've asked that question to. I'm like, well, why would they do it? What would be the point of it? Why say, okay, this exists, but this doesn't? Some people have said that, it's like a man, like a big, powerful man, that it was, government genetically, put together and then it escaped and, different things like that. So I don't necessarily know why it would be, other than the fact that maybe they are aliens, again, kind of coming back to that. But then at the same time, by saying that just kind of gives me a reason to stop thinking about it, because, okay, well, now it makes sense, so, or saying, it's like saying Sasquatch, they're ghosts. Okay, well, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like, okay, well, I can't look any further than that, so that must be what it is. So,
yeah, I think when you talk about how, the people will link it to ghosts and they link it to UFOs, I think that's where I am. If I had to put my kind of 2 pence down, I would probably say that they are all one and the same in terms of paranormal phenomena. And I know you're as you say, you're slightly more on the flesh and blood side, and that's fine. I think and what I love about what you said was, you're not going to draw a line in the sand, because the second that you do, it prevents further research. Because what you're saying there is, I know what it is. And once you say that, there's no need to research anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You can don't write another book, kind of put your pen down, job's done, you can retire. So I think it's all, you have to keep that open mind, don't you? You have to constantly be thinking about what it could be, and going where the evidence takes you as well is quite important.
Right. And that's the thing, is that I always tell people, I'm like, look, I can't 100% sit here and say, Sasquatch exists. I can't. But what I can say is that there's enough evidence to suggest that there is something going on in the woods. People have seen, something that they can't explain. And these aren't just, just like your regular, people. There's people, they're police officers, they're mayors, they're governors. People have actually said that, hey, I saw something. So you have to believe. You can't believe that you can't think that everybody is lying. Are there some people in there out of 10 people that are lying? Sure, absolutely, but not everybody. There's no reason for it.
Yeah, and it was probably a question I probably should have asked you at the start, really. But your passion for this, has it ever led you to have your own experience?
I always say it like this: I've had experiences, yes. But when it comes to actually visually putting my eyes on something, I am late to the party every single time. I am that guy that shows up after the fact every single time. But I will say, the group that I'm with, the New York Bigfoot Society, the founder of the group, his name's Gary, awesome guy, phenomenal guy. He's been doing, like paranormal investigation for like 26, 27 years, Sasquatch investigation for about 14 years. And he's an outdoorsman, he's that guy that hikes 12 miles out into the middle of the forest just to turn around and walk back.
Yeah.
He's the guy, if somebody gets lost in the woods, you send Gary out there and he'll come back with Jimmy Hoffa, with him too, So he's very much he's very level-headed though. Like his education and background is animal behavior. He ran a humane society for a while. So like he knows every track from the next track. He knows what everything is. He's just studied it. He's very, very smart. And he's the first guy that will be able to find why something happened and what it was, logical explanation for it. And I've learned so much from him. It was back in January, maybe the second or third week of January. I'm sitting in here in my office, at work, where I am right now. And he sends me a message saying, I just saw Bigfoot. Now, I stopped everything I was doing, I was doing, because Gary doesn't do that.
Right.
He was over 3 miles, around 3 miles, maybe 4 miles out into the Adirondacks. And he was just out there walking. He was looking at, prints, not looking for Bigfoot prints, just looking to see what the animals, that were going through that area were, and he kind of had this weird feeling, and he looked up, and there was this like ledge area up in front of him. And he's like, there was a Bigfoot standing there. He's like, wow. There was a Bigfoot standing there. He goes, and again, this is the guy that would be able to say, no, it was a bear. He knows exactly what everything is. And he's like, this was a Bigfoot. I've got no other explanation. And it's changed him too, because, it's not that he didn't believe in them before, but, it's just like, okay, I think to a degree with everybody, seeing is believing.
Yeah.
For Gary to take that step and say that, I mean, that's huge. I mean, because he usually can know exactly what it is. He's a hunter as well. So he knows, what's out there. He took out his phone. It was a quick encounter. He was able to snap a picture. It was far, far away. So of course, when you do too much, it pixelates. Yeah. But he did the right thing. He did what most people don't ever do. Immediately after it walked away or ran away, I mean, again, it was only seconds. He took a picture of it not there.
Yeah.
Where you don't normally see that, to show, so you could see that there was something there.
Okay.
And he said with the phone, he said it was, the picture on the phone, he said was just, he goes, it's a horrible picture. He said, but he goes, I could see its face enough, and I could see its body enough to know what it was, and to see it walk away, to know that it wasn't anything that should have been there. And then it got a little bit weirder after that, because he turns around and there's two forest rangers coming up behind him. Normally forest rangers, they come up and they start saying, hey, what are you doing out here? Yeah. Start questioning you. They want to look at this. They want to look at that. They want to know what you're carrying in your bag. Apparently they didn't do that. Apparently they came up to him and they were talking to him, but not in their usual way of doing things. And they were very standoffish. Right. So we're like, well, that's really weird, and he knows forest rangers and, different things. He didn't know who these guys were. And again, you're talking 3 miles out in the middle of nowhere, two of them. And what did he just see a few minutes prior? Yeah. So for him, that even validated what he saw, because he's like, they didn't say anything, but, we're under the belief that they were probably tracking whatever he just saw.
Well, what I was going to say, the first thing that came to my mind was the Bigfoot version of Men in Black. So you've had a sighting, and now you've got two kind of rangers coming up to you just to make sure you're not going to talk about that, are you? Yeah. Did he get that impression, or?
The impression he got is that there was something that they were doing.
Yeah.
that they couldn't tell them about.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Because again, usually they find you and they go up one side of you and down the other.
Yeah.
You know, because it's their job to protect the forest and the animals in it. Didn't get that. So it was kind of the other way around. So they talked with him, but then that was it, and then it was done.
And the photo is that publicly available for people to see, or
I don't know if he has it up on the website. I know I've personally obviously seen it. I don't know if he has it up there because he talks about it, but I guess I would have to go to our New York Bigfoot Society page and look and see if he's got it up.
Well, that's fine. I'll put a link of that anyway beneath the podcast, so anyone that wants to go and have a look at it, just out of curiosity, if it's there, that would be great.
Yeah.
Do you have your? You talk about the experiences that you had. I assume that would be you've heard things like knocking, what they call the knocking sounds, and
yes,
the howling sounds and stuff. Mm-hmm. Are they the kind of experiences that you've had?
Yeah. I guess one of the experiences I had when I first started with the group, one of the theories we have is, they talk about, tree knocks, and it's a form of communication. That's the theory behind it. And, for me, I always struggled with it because every time, you would hear like a knockback or something like that, it always sounded exactly the same.
Yeah.
But yet every time somebody picks up a stick, depending on depth, if it's rotted, this and that, it never sounds the same. Never, ever sounds the same. So we kind of went out and just kind of practiced the theory, because, again, we're more on the flesh and blood side. So we're thinking, okay, primates, they clack rocks together. They throw rocks. They do different things like that. So we said, well, what if they're not using sticks? What if they're using rocks? So we went out and we tested the theory. And every single time we took a rock and we threw it at a tree, like we at first we didn't expect it to really make a whole lot of sound, but when we did it, it actually made a lot more sound. It carried a lot further than we thought, and it had that same exact snap noise, that same exact crack noise that you hear. So me and another person in the group, we were out walking. We were probably about 500-600 yards away in that general length from where our base camp was. We could see Gary down at base camp with our tech guy because we had a fire going. And Gary's like, okay, I'm going to try it, and see what we get, because what we do is we put digital recorders all through the woods and through our research area. Gary primarily does it with trail cams as well, to study, the animals that are coming through the area and the activity in the area. But we had recorders up, so Gary did it. He hit the tree. We heard it. We could see him, in the distance. We could see him doing it. And then about 45 seconds later, we heard the same exact sound come back. We could see Gary, we could see Luke, so we knew that they hadn't done anything. And after he did it, he radioed us and said, "Okay, it's done." And we knew it was done because we could see him. And for about 45 seconds later, and the beauty of it was one of the digital recorders picked it up, so you can hear it clear as day.
Wow.
So that was awesome. And we're not saying it was Bigfoot related. We're just saying that it falls under the umbrella of, this is what, folks have said over the years, that this is a form of communication with them. A couple things we did was like one, we took in consideration the environment. Okay, so is the wind blowing at all? Well, not where we are. Is it blowing up higher? So, we look up, to see if the top of the trees are swaying, because obviously, if it's swaying, the tree could make a crack noise that kind of sounds like that. No wind, nothing. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, out in the middle of the Adirondacks. Dark out, nobody out there, no reason for that to have happened. So again, we're not saying that it was Sasquatch related, but it falls under that umbrella. So that was a very cool experience. And again, to have, to listen back on the recorder and actually hear it was phenomenal, because 9 times out of 10, you hear something, the recorders don't pick it up.
No,
it just misses it. But we got that. we've had some weird experiences where you can hear something walking in the distance. We played some Native American drumming and chanting out in the area,
that's interesting.
Which was awesome because if you've never done that in the middle of the woods at night, it is awesome. The echo and I was about 50 yards away, because if something was going to hear it and be drawn to it, I wanted to see it,
Yeah, cool.
So it's like pitch dark, and then I'm sitting there, and again, I'm all by myself because the others are up by the laptop with the big speaker, and it was just a cool experience to sit there and hear that in the distance. But when we got done playing it, nothing had happened, and then at one point you could actually hear something in the distance, kind of walking. Now, again, I'm not saying it was a Bigfoot or anything like that. It could have been an animal. We couldn't see anything. And the two, Gary and Leanne, who was out with me, they were like, it doesn't sound like it's on all fours. It sounds bipedal. Yeah. Me, I'm tone deaf. I played in bands for years, so I can't hear that. So I can just hear something moving. But some people are like, I can hear this. And with Gary saying it again, just knowing every animal from this animal, and they're saying that it's the walking sounded bipedal based off of blah 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 and blah. We didn't see anything, but again, it was an experience of what was there. Why didn't a thermal pick it up? We don't know. So that night after we wrapped up, we're walking back to the cars. We get back to finally get to the cars, and I look back over my shoulder, and I see this light sitting out there. I'm like, what is that? That's weird. So I pointed it out to Gary, and he's looking at it, and we don't know what it was. We know the areas. We know that it wasn't produced by any swamp gases or anything like that. There's nobody out there. There was no campers out there. If it was somebody with a flashlight, obviously it would be moving around. It was just there. And if you walked closer, it kind of got dimmer. So if it was a light, obviously it's going to get brighter as you get closer to it. It would dim itself. It didn't move, but it would dim itself.
Wow.
And so that was, we kind of called that the Adirondack Lights, because it's the Adirondacks that we search in.
You're almost crossing into that realm of paranormal there, aren't you?
I know.
What we spoke of earlier. That's brilliant. I mean, we'll just look at kind of rounding it off now. Your book is obviously for sale. It's doing fantastically well, which I'm really pleased to hear. Where can the listeners go to buy that book?
Sure. Obviously the most popular place is Amazon. You can go on Amazon right now. It hit as a #1 bestseller on Amazon. So I was really pleased with that. I didn't expect it. I expected it to sell, but again, to hit #1 and be a bestseller blew my mind. So again, anybody who's purchased it, thank you so much for the support. So you can go on Amazon and get it. You can. It's going to shortly be available as a few different brick and mortar locations. It won't be at a lot of them, just a certain select few. Yeah. You can reach out to me directly. You can go to my website, kwirish.com. You can go to the Cryptopunkologist.com. It'll bring you to the same website. You can follow me on Facebook. You look me up, Kenney W Irish, the Cryptopunkologist. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. Just reach out. And I've got some books now with me. So I can send autographed books as well if you want that. I'm going to be at a few different events this year too. Next month in May, I'm going to be in Tennessee. So if anybody's out in the Tennessee area, I'm going to be at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Festival. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be one of the speakers alongside Ron Moorhead and Cliff Brackman from Finding Bigfoot. In August, I'm going to be in Port Henry, New York at the Lake Champlain Champ Monster Festival. I'm going to be there with Paul Bartholomew and a couple other filmmakers. Correct in, I believe, Alexandra, I think is his name. We're going to be there at what they call the Crypto Cave meet and greet. And then in September, I'm going to be in Whitehall, New York, which is the epicenter of Bigfoot sightings on the East Coast in the U.S. I'm going to be there with Paul Bartholomew. I'm going to be speaking at that one. October, I'm going to be Fort Wayne, Indiana. So if anybody's in the Fort Wayne, Indiana area, I'm going to be at the Dead Con. I'll be there signing books and meeting and greeting. And that's a big, big conference. I mean, there's going to be people there. There's paranormal people who are going to be there, cryptozoologists, actors, like Kane Hodder, who plays Jason Voorhees. There's going to be 3 guys there that play Jason Voorhees. There's going to be guys there that have played Leatherface. So it's going to be a fantastic, fantastic conference. I'm really looking forward to it. And then in November, I'm going to be in Lexington, Kentucky, at the Crypticon. I'll be speaking at that as well. Cliff Brackman will be there, and the whole actual crew of Finding Bigfoot. Matt Moneymaker's going to be there. Bobo's going to be there. Renee's going to be there. So, again, if you guys are in any of those areas, please, come over and say hi to me. I'd love to meet you and, get to know you and, start following each other on social media.
Great. Unfortunately, I won't be making any of those living in the UK. And I hope that they go ahead. I'll
FaceTime you.
Yeah, that'll be good. I hope they go ahead and you don't get hit with more restrictions. And hopefully there is a cryptid conference in the UK that maybe one day you can come across to, and we can hook up there. That would be good. I'll be sure to put all the links to your sites and to your book beneath the podcast so the listeners can access it easier as always. And that just leaves me to say thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I hope we can get you back on again for the future. Maybe if you write book number 2.
Oh yeah, no. I've there's a follow up already in progress.
Brilliant.
So, I'm going to throw it out there too. So obviously, I'm not going to cover all 50 states again.
Yeah.
But so look at how many countries are out there. So it's going to be more of an international coverage. So I'm pretty excited about it. So
great. Well, there's an area around by us called Cannock Chase, and there's supposedly a Bigfoot that lives there. So when you get to the UK, let me know, and I can point you in the right direction for that.
I definitely will.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Kenny. Thank you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
So that was the interview there with Kenny. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Some of the stories he told there I found fascinating, particularly ones towards the end, with the experiences that he had personally with the knocking and that ball of light as well, which for me certainly does transpose between the Bigfoot phenomena and the paranormal phenomena as well, which we did touch on a little bit there in the interview. I really do like Kenny's approach. I like, that one comment he made with the drawing of the line in the sand, and you can't do that. And I really, really agree with that, because it goes for the same in any kind of research you do. It doesn't have to be paranormal or cryptids. But really, the second you do that, you're really kind of, putting it in stone, so to speak, that you know what is going on, and therefore you don't have to investigate any further. There's no need to research, because the line has been drawn, and that's it. We can't consider anything else. And I think that's wrong, and clearly so does Kenny. And you have to keep that open mind, and you have to, go where the evidence takes you, as I say so many times. If the evidence takes you to a particular place that kind of neglects or negates the theory that you've been working on, well, then so be it. You have to change the theory to fit the evidence. You can't change the evidence to fit your theory, unfortunately. And there are a lot of people out there that do work to that method, and it's not something I certainly agree with. But yeah, as I say, thanks to Kenny for coming on. He was working at the time, so he took time out of his day. There's a 5-hour difference between us where we were, so really grateful for him taking time out of his working day to come on to the interview. And we will get him on for another show, no doubt, in the future. It seems like he's got ideas on the next book, so it would be really good to get him on to talk about that. But yeah, don't forget, guys, I mentioned it in the intro again, don't forget about the competition. Just drop me an email and I will reply with your number, and that will be your raffle ticket to win a signed copy of my new book. You've really, as I say, you've really got nothing to lose. You're just sending an email and you could win a free book. So until next time, guys, take care.